Good morning. The auto professional two-wheeler week after COVID, and today it's going to be all about electric two-wheelers as we see the disruption unfold right in front of our eyes. I would like to invite a very special guest, Mr. Sudarshan Venu, Joint MD, TVS Motor Company, and interviewing him would be my colleague, Murli Gopalan, Consulting Editor, Autocar Professional. Please settle down, have your cup of tea or coffee in your hands, and enjoy the proceedings over the next few hours.
Mayank, thank you very, very much. Thank you. Sudarshan, good morning.
Good morning, Murli. A pleasure to be with you.
Likewise, the feeling is mutual. It's wonderful to see you. And it is an important session for us today, electric, and you really been at the forefront in a sense in terms of initiatives and a whole lot of things. And perhaps we could therefore start off on the macro subject. Is electric an absolute imperative for the two-wheeler industry?
I think electric is really probably the most factor today, along with a couple of others, that's going to be very important for the future of the two-wheeler industry and the automotive industry at a larger level. I think particularly for two-wheelers, electric is really very, very important and something we're investing behind. It is key to the future, as I said, and I think it's something we're investing behind, both in terms of products, in terms of the teams, in terms of partnerships, and in terms of the extended enterprise as well.
But Sudarshan, something that always crosses my mind and a whole lot of others is it really the sole answer? Because you have a whole lot of companies like yours and many others who have invested substantially in BS6, and it's not as if the internal combustion engine will become redundant overnight, will it?
I think there are two questions really that you're asking. One is on ICE and one is on the future fuels. Regarding ICE, I think BS6 has really reduced emissions by 93, 94%, something in that order. And therefore vehicles today are really significantly cleaner. Most of the two-wheelers are a much smaller portion of emissions. And even vehicles are only the third largest source, but this is large enough where we must do what we need to do to act to move in the direction of sustainability. Given the fact that BS6 is substantially lower emissions, you find that actually, especially in India, bulk of the emissions are coming from pre-BS4 vehicles. And therefore, even in two-wheelers, maybe 80%, 90% of the emissions come from these vehicles in the park. So scrapping, which has been announced, is also something quite important to scrapping is also quite important to ensure that these vehicles get off the road and the BS6 vehicles get more on the road, because that will also bring a reduction in the fleet emissions. Regarding ICE, I think going forward, there are various things like ethanol, blending with ethanol, which are being discussed to keep emissions low and also be independent of imports. So these progress will continue to happen. But the big push is really, and that'll have a certain time, and markets will take time, and customer acceptance, range improvement, cost reduction. All this will take some time. And during that time, ICE will still have relevance, and it may still have some relevance after that. But the big focus really for us is electrification for the future. And we will invest in, and we are committed to that. And that's something we're really excited about. In the automotive industry and in trucks and things, you see a lot of talk about fuel cells and other options as well, hydrogen. But we believe that really for two-wheelers and possibly small three-wheelers, that electric will be the most prominent one forward and promising one forward.
Are you concerned about challenges in costing? Because you speak to a whole lot of people and, the cost of batteries, for instance, and equally, if I may even slip in a sub-question to that, unanswered questions on batteries, when it comes to replace them, and there's a cost issue that has to be addressed by customers, which typically they don't encounter in their more familiar IC engine.
Regarding the cost of batteries, I think, yes, it is coming down, and technology is also improving. So one is the cost is coming down. Second is range is going up. New chemistries are being found, and are being developed, which will have lower and lower costs, more and more range. So I think with time, this will come to an equilibrium where costs makes a lot of sense, and that we should commit and invest behind that. Regarding your second question on life of the battery, I think, look, the life of the battery is really quite good and it will improve further. There may be questions here and there, but I really feel that the life of the batteries are only getting better, and hopefully they will be more than the life of the vehicle, or equal to the rest of the vehicle or the usage of a vehicle. And therefore we must invest in provide in future and better technology, because it's changing and improving every day with so much global investment in this field. And therefore we must invest behind newer and newer chemistries, newer and newer batteries going forward.
Okay. If you have to, well, stick your neck out, and, a whole lot of people have been saying that this percentage of the two-wheeler segment will go electric by the end of this decade. And what is your take on that? Because, the momentum has started, but the reality also remains that only a minuscule proportion of customers really offer electric at this point in time.
I think really, Murli, it's a little hard to put a number to it, because market forces, customer acceptance, charging, these things will determine the exact pace. But I can tell you that as far as TVS is concerned, we will be ready for an aggressive case, and we'll invest and launch a range of products in the next couple of years to really show our commitment to this and seek to play a leading role in that emerging market and the huge opportunity that is available in two-wheelers and also in three-wheelers.
Before I can get into the TVS specific strategy that you just outlined, the thing is, there are also realities. Companies like yours are big exporters. And and even going forward, there will be what I would call importing countries that will still prefer the IC engine. And then you have electric, which is gaining traction in India. So balancing a product mix at plants, doesn't that again remain a challenge in manufacturing?
That is part of the transition, and I think that will have to be managed. At the same time, I think electric in some of the other countries may take a little longer than it does in India, but I think in some of the countries it's promising opportunity there as well. So we have to look at the opportunities and see how we can um, really capitalize. At the same time, yes, you're right, it will in many countries take longer than even India to go for a significant portion of electrification. That's part of the transition. We have to manage that. And I think during that period of a long time, you'll see that there are opportunities for newer products or improvement in the ICE space as well, both in India and also many of the markets you referred to. And we will invest for new products there as well.
I guess, as you said even earlier, I mean, electric may not, I mean, you also have mixed fuels, the ethanol mix, again, that could be answers to cleaner alternatives. You would go with that, wouldn't you? It just may not be about electric alone.
We will certainly invest in those options for ICE, which make it cleaner and greener, and product opportunities in that segment as well. But as I said, electric is is the most important focus.
Could
But
you
of course, we
therefore,
will do that as well.
okay, yes. Could you therefore, people would be, definitely keen to know what the TVS strategy is. You've gone very aggressive, the tie-up with Tata Power being the latest. You've indicated a whole host of products coming in. So really, what would your strategy be on electric? If you could extrapolate and kind of give an indication, what a
I
strategy
think,
would be like.
as I mentioned, we would like to play a leading role in this opportunity and in this transition to electric. For this, we will launch a very good range of attractive products. We've started with IQ, but you'll see much more: two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and across segments, from a premium segment to scooters to other segments as well, to three-wheelers for passenger, for cargo. So we'll have the range. Secondly, we have over 500 engineers who are already working behind this. And we have partnerships for charging infrastructure as well. We believe home charging will also play an important role. So we are offering home chargers to a lot of all our customers. We are giving the home SmartX home charger option, which we come and install. At the same time, public charging is important both from a range anxiety point of view as well as a convenience point of view. And therefore, you've seen we'll tie up with Tata Power, and hopefully we'll tie up with more charging partners to create more infrastructure for our customers.
So if you could, in the sense, even in the form of a teaser, give a kind of a roadmap on, in your own internal assessment, what percentage of TVS vehicles would go electric over, let's say, the next 5 years leading on to 2030?
As I said, Murli, it's hard to put a number to it, but I can tell you our capacities, both in terms of products, people, and capacities will be ahead of market. And as demand moves, we will be there really looking forward to delight customers and play a leading role in the space.
I often heard Sudarshan from a whole host of leadership people like you that even in the transition to electric, it's very, very important to reboot the thinking within the workforce. I mean, I've had people saying now employees should go beyond the conventional thing of mechanical and electrical engineering, start thinking anew. And there's one company that said we, in fact, treat them as data scientists. So within TVS, I'm curious how you are getting into the aspect of reskilling.
I think there are a couple of things really there. Data scientist is a specialized field in the area of analytics. So yes, sure. But I think there are two larger issues. One is that I think reskilling of people is very important because you need a lot of the younger engineers to have a very good electronics understanding for these newer areas and not only be confined to pure mechanical. You also, I think, education and continued education and continuous education will play an important role. And I think even universities over time will start changing, hopefully soon, where they will start producing engineers who are ready for this rather than pure mechanical, but mechatronics kind of engineers and people who have electronics understanding as well, because this will be much more an electrical understanding, which will be much more important. So this is one aspect. The second aspect, I think, also changing the culture of the company in terms of the speed at which we work and making those cultural changes to really be a new economy kind of company. And that's something we're really working on as well.
Really? Well, that's interesting. I mean, which would mean that engaging more with startups, getting a bright new talent pool,
Yes,
things
and
like
also
that.
I think the level of empowerment the of the talent and the speed at which things work, the nature in which work is done, all these things have to be relooked at to really be faster in today's world, I believe.
How do you propose to do that? Because people also, I mean, in Munich, for instance, my friend works in a German automaker and he says talent is extraordinarily hard to come by and also expensive. So, so I mean,
I think those are all true for everybody. But really, I'm excited because I think TVS has a great talent pool of engineers who are committed to this future and this way of working. And that's something that really excites us. And that's something I think all companies will have to continue to keep at over in the going forward, really.
absolutely. There's, of course, I've heard this that from other people in the industry that it's legislation is in a way driving change in electric, the drive for clean air and things like that. But equally, the bottom line is it's the customer eventually who drives the change. So, what is your take on that? I mean, at one part is legislation, the other part is the realities of market where companies invest substantially, and clearly there's also an ROI that needs to be factored in, isn't it?
I think if you look at it, it's not just regulation, but a global move towards sustainability, ESG, and these kind of things. So I think it's beyond regulation as well. It's the way the world is, and people are cognizant of the issues of climate change and want to do something to address it. So I think everybody is going in that way. But I think, of course, you're right. The consumer is the key to determine the path of acceptance, especially in a business where consumers determine everything. And therefore, that's why I said it's hard to put a number. But as consumers use EVs, and the key, I think, is particularly in India to produce world-class products, which are better than the current ICEs, at least as good, but hopefully something better as well. And therefore, that I think will help to make this acceptance better. And that's also why we're providing nearly 4 days worth of range in a single charge in iCube, and also looking at fast charging and other tie-ups to ease the convenience of the customer and home charging.
In other words, you think it's a great opportunity for Indian industry to truly display its global competence in the electric arena.
I think Indian companies, especially in the two-wheeler area, only have shown their global competence. I think if you see the export numbers of the industry,
It's staggering.
I think it's amazing. And if you go to Africa and Latin America, you see so many Indian products. The industry, I think, must really be proud. Bajaj, TVS, Hero, Enfield, you see these brands everywhere. And I think, therefore, the industry has done it in the two-wheeler area of ICE. And I'm sure that in the electric era as well, this will definitely happen.
Absolutely. What do you have to say about a certain what I would consider valid criticism that at the moment there is massive subsidy coming in, and the truth is, even in the case of China, it is very apparent subsidies cannot continue forever. So right now the honeymoon is in right earnest. I mean, in terms of people snapping electric because the price tags have become more competitive, but governments can't afford to subsidize them forever, can they? So what is your take on that?
Yeah, I think governments can't afford to subsidize them forever because the GST is 23% difference, and then there are subsidies on top. So yes, I see what your point. And in some of the countries, like you mentioned, China and others, when the subsidies have come down, there have been blips in the market. But I think one should look at really the long-term trend and the medium-term trend towards electrification and invest behind that. And with battery costs and things coming down, customer acceptance going up, I think an equilibrium will be achieved. It may take some time, there may be some ups, downs, but really we must look at the directional trend, which is compelling and invest behind that.
More specifically, I mean, what really you believe could be the challenges ahead? It is still an unknown, it's exciting, but what are the things that perhaps at the back of your head worry you? Realities, you know?
I think I'm really quite excited about the opportunity, and all these are obstacles which every transition you have to face, and solutions will emerge and get on with it.
Yes,
There'll be some faster years, there'll be some slower years, but these are in a period of time really mild ups and downs, and really we have to invest behind the fast growing trend.
which is true. Again, I'm curious, you know, there are people who have constantly asked, there's also in a field like this, it's rather important to collaborate. Like in Japan, for instance, you've had the battery consortium of the big four, Honda, Yamaha, you know, Suzuki and Kawasaki. And you believe that in India, personally, from your point of view, what people call a spirit of cooperation, competitive and yet cooperate. Do you believe that such an idea could germinate in the electric two-wheel space?
Yes, I think there are always opportunities for cooperation. Like, for example, maybe on the charging socket, it can be standardized or things like that. But at the same time, we also have to understand that each of us want to compete, each of us want to do better. And so, in many areas like batteries, like motors, like the products, there will be continuous innovation by all sides to be ahead of others. And that is the spirit of competition. And through that, great solutions will emerge for the customer. So, while there will certainly be areas to cooperate, that should not in any way stop innovation or stop investments in newer areas or create some lower standard, but really provide the best cutting edge standard, which is a moving goalpost. The global best world standard is a moving goalpost because of all the innovation that's going on in this area. And therefore, every year, better solutions will emerge, better solutions. So that competition has to be there to deliver the best to the Indian consumer, who has to benefit at the end of the day.
Which is true. Again, there's a question that's crossed my mind because there really been no clear-cut answer, and perhaps you could help me with this. Right now, the focus is on the scooter space in two-wheelers, and you had a acquisition of Norton. Clearly, I would see a whole lot of technical competencies also flow into the system. You also have an alliance with BMW Motorrad. So you believe that electric could go beyond scooters, even motorcycles, for instance? And this time, just asking out of curiosity.
I think there will be multiple product options, and really it is consumers who will determine that exact future, not the OEMs.
Right.
And therefore, we have to offer solutions, and based on customer acceptance, the paths will emerge. But from TVS point of view, we're working on a range of products. And I really believe the consumers will choose the final solutions. Form factors can change from time to time. Chetak was the dominant product. Then there were motorcycles of all the brands. And then after that, again, scooters came back in a different form. So these things can happen. But we have to invest, and I think let the consumer choose with great products.
Which is true. And how about challenges? I mean, people have again spoken about that in the recent meetings at SIAM, that even in the quest for electric, bigger issues on recycling and disposable of batteries, even while keeping an eye on the environment, post-electric, that's something that
Yes,
cannot be
recycling
ignored.
is definitely an issue. And I think because all these batteries will emerge. So that is something for which I think a solution is pending. And we have to all apply our minds and find a solution. As say 10%, 20%, these kind of numbers of industry start coming and the products that finish a life cycle, then all those old batteries, what you do is a solution that needs to be found really.
It is. I can
You see
see,
now,
yeah, please
some
continue.
this Redwood and some of these companies are trying to find a solution for end of life and recycling. So it'll be interesting.
Yes, which is true. I can see a lot of participants are clearly watching what you're saying very, very carefully. And one question which is rather interesting, a key challenge in EV shift is localization of batteries and e-powertrain parts. Leading innovators like Tesla are highly vertically integrated. What will be the TVS approach to localization and vertical integration?
We are really looking at localization, but there are challenges as and in this kind of forum where everybody really knows this subject as well, if not better. Everybody's in the industry. I'm happy to hear their thoughts as well if they have any ideas, but or thoughts to share. But yes, localization is a challenge, particularly on cells or even on other EBOM and electric drivetrain parts. You don't see the suppliers wanting to put up facilities in India, and that is certainly a challenge. And I think that is one area. If you say what are the areas of caution, I think that is one area we need to really overcome.
Yes, and that's a tough one, right?
You asked a little earlier what are one of the challenges. I think this is really one of them,
This is one of the challenges. And I know there's yet another
especially
interesting,
because with some countries dominating the supply chain, this is
yes,
an opportunity for us to have our own supply chain, and we mustn't become dependent on others.
true, but sometimes at one level, isn't that also easier said than done? Because other countries we're talking to also have a first mover advantage. And
That's where
are
we
in,
need to plan this electric transition in a way that it's to our advantage.
okay, it's not entirely inconceivable in your view.
We must work at it
Yes,
and make it happen.
that's true. You're right. There's another interesting observation that you might want to hear
That is
from one
key
of.
for this. I think localized supply chain renewable power is key to ensuring that the benefit of electric vehicles is there for the whole ecosystem.
True. But equally at this stage, even when we talk to you without sounding too political, the point is there's a huge energy crisis looming large in the world. And even back in India, the whole issue of blackouts, and then we are going electric. When you factor in all those, it kind of adds up to a rather grim future, doesn't it?
I don't think it's a grim future. I think solution will emerge.
Uh,
Humankind has always been very innovative to find solutions. But yeah, it's. I mean, it is. I suppose it's. This is hopefully a short-term issue of this power and gas and all these crises, and that it'll be and coal, and it'll be over soon. This hope. I don't have a clear answer, to be honest. I
right,
don't know that sector well enough.
right. And there's another interesting question which you may, learning from the pace of development of battery swapping tech in China, what challenges is TVS or the private sector in India facing to make this a tangible reality? I think you may want to answer that.
I think this has had some issues in China, but really, as far as India is concerned, I think you have to innovate and give more and more range rather than invest too much capacity in these kind of things. So I think the way battery technology is evolving, all this infrastructure, charging type issues, swapping, all these discussions will become less and less important because the fundamental battery at cost will give range. It is giving range. It will only get better. Cost will only come down, and this will make it a convenient home charge for the consumer.
The question
I
I
mean,
asked
even
you,
today on a
yes,
4-hour home charge, a normal iCube gives you 1 week of range. So, or 4 days of range. So I think this issue will be over. This issue and cost issues will really be overcome.
I
May
guess
take
so.
1 year more or less, but it'll be overcome.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that what you said that reminds me. There's always this anxiety factor about range, you see, and so
But
I
the
guess
average Indian consumer only drives 25 kilometers a day,
yes,
particularly in scooters. And iCube or Chetak or Ather or whoever is giving a lot more range than that. So there should be no issue of just coming back home and charging it like you charge your phone at night.
absolutely, and I guess people should embrace it. A question I asked you, but you may want to still look at it. How do you balance between your IC scooters and being aggressive in EVs? A valid question from someone who is tracking your company.
I think they are two separate issues. We have to be aggressive in EV. We also have to focus and do better in the ICE space. So I don't know if it's a balance. I think you have to do both.
And
But
wait for the market realities to kind of decide,
yes,
right?
so we will invest behind both. Of course, EV is very important for us. But if there are opportunities in ICE, we'll continue to invest in those product opportunities or market opportunities.
Right.
And we'll
And
continuously, without it doesn't have to be said, but it goes without saying that, of course, our products will continue to be improved. They'll continue to get updates, the IC products. They'll continue to get better, more mileage, more power, more features. All that will continue to go on in parallel with a full team and focus.
correct. The semiconductor issue is also something that someone's asked. How do you, people like you, how do you manage to weather, how do you plan to weather the storm? It's a real issue, isn't it?
Yes, it's really an issue. As far as two-wheelers are concerned, it really was an issue on the ABS side. Um, it's improving a bit now. We'll have to rejig some of our supply chains where possible and really manage this issue. It is an issue.
Especially on your EV subsidiary, there's somebody who does say, does it make sense to ring fence EV subsidiary and raise external capital to fund product development, given the inherent risks of EV rollout? How would you answer his concern?
Everybody will have their own strategy and you'll see it play out in the market. But certainly as far as TVS is concerned, we're committed to investing in the space.
So in a way, I think, yes, I think so. I think there's really no getting away from this. It's here to stay. I guess it's a pace and also the concerns about, I think, the investments.
I think rather than getting away, we should go for it with excitement.
You really think so?
Yes, sir.
and like you said, maybe India
and there'll be opportunities, like you said, in many markets for IC to continue, and in India itself. So that will also have to continue.
Yes, yes. And there's somebody who's given you the thumbs up who says that I'm totally with Sudarshan on this. Universities should start offering more fusion courses, not only like mechatronics, but even full-time streams like EV technology.
And to add to the gentleman who said that, I didn't have it on my screen, so excuse me, I don't know the name. But whoever said it, sir, I think it's that, and also continued education. Like a lot of your young engineers between 20 and 30, whom you have hired thinking of mechanical engineering, need to be retained. So I think some of that university should also offer that. Or if there's any way it can be done for the automotive industry together between suppliers, OEMs, I think that's good too.
That's true. This is again a very valid question, Sudarshan, given the obvious strengths of the TVS group. And how can the TVS group competencies help TVS Motor adapt EV much faster and distribute capex and research spend? That's an obvious advantage, isn't it?
I think in TVS group, each company is run in its own way. So if there are certain synergies, it will be harnessed. But at the same time, the focus for everybody is to ensure those world-class solutions to the customer. And I think everybody is focused on that and really developing world-class products which can succeed here and also in overseas markets.
Right. This is something you may want to take. TVS Motor, will it outsource a powertrain, motor control, or both, or keep them in-house?
Those are questions which really my team will have to answer as we go forward.
And what is TVS Motor doing on hydrogen-powered vehicle technology? Interesting.
I think there are many options which will emerge in hydrogen and other areas. So we'll share more with you at the right time.
Sudarshan, this is very, very interesting.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Have a good day. Thank you for
so much.
Giving us time. And
thank you.
See you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Mayank, handing it back to you. I think that was a very, very interesting chat. Very interesting.
Absolutely, Murli. It was a very insightful interview, and very encouraging to hear, that TVS is fully committed to invest in the sustainable technology, going forward. So thank you very much for doing that interview.
Thank you, Mayank. I'm handing it back to you. And there you go.
Sure. So good morning, everyone, once again. And, we've seen the tone has been set for the day ahead, which is going to be focusing on electric two-wheelers, the opportunities and the challenges that lie ahead. I would now like to invite Mr. Horma Sorabji, editor, Autocar India, to take us into the panel discussion where we have some esteemed panelists from OEMs as well as component manufacturers, specifically focusing on the two-wheeler industry and particularly EVs. Good morning, Hormuz. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much. Welcome everyone to the panel on this rush to go electric. It's obviously a hot topic that we can't ignore. But whilst there is a headlong rush to go electric, the question is, are we absolutely ready? Is the consumer ready? Is the infrastructure ready? And more important, is the supply chain ready? Which again is a hot topic because it seems to be behind on this. And we have, to talk about this, we have a very diverse panel today. we have with us Mr. Ravneet Fokela, who's the Chief Business Officer of Ather Energy. He's representing the OEM side. Thanks for joining us, Ravneet. I don't see, I'm not sure, I don't see him, but we were to have Arjun Jain from Varroc. I'm not sure if he's joined us, but he was to join us.
I believe Arjun would be taking 5 more minutes for this.
Okay, fine. Okay, so Arjun, he's the business head from of the electric and electronics division of the Varroc Group. We've got Kabir Bhandari of Padmini VNA Mechatronics, and Shivalek Prasad, who's the Vice President Sales and Alliances at Sibros. So thanks, gentlemen, for joining us today. And Ravneet, I'd like to kick off with you just to put some context, and because you are with the OEM side, and for you to just give us a sense of this rush we call, is it accelerating? And finally, it's the consumer that really will drive it. So, looking at the current situation, the backdrop of rocketing fuel prices, which seems to be really the main trigger now. And a lot of states coming forward with more subsidies, and there's this overall bigger awareness about EVs. How is this panning out? Is the swing to electric happening faster than you anticipated, or is it just a big growth over still a very small base? So in absolute numbers, it's going to be a long, long while before we see, EVs coming to a sizable percentage of overall two-wheeler sales.
Right. Hey, thanks for having me over, Hamad. So I think from our perspective, from an OEM perspective, actually, I mean, if you look at this overall as an industry, the tailwinds are very strong, and it's a variety of things, right? And it's also like a perfect storm that we're witnessing at this point in time. So there is, starting with the from the central government push where the FAME 2 top up came in. In addition to that, the state government, that many states jumped in with their own version of top up. Which on the financial side, so far EVs were making sense, most certainly on a two-wheeler basis, were making sense on a TCO basis. But with the subsidy coming in, state and central government, it's no longer a TCO story. Like upfront ticket price is competitive, so it's taken that the price difference completely away from for a lot of customers. And for states where this hasn't kicked in yet, the TCO still continues to make sense. So this price equation is super duper sort of helpful for this business side. So that's one, right? The other side is on the and bear in mind, when with the government policy, etc., it's not just a hard financial angle of of subsidy and therefore price. It also is symbolic of a larger change that consumers sort of are beginning to subliminally acknowledge, right? Like, hey, this is where the future is. This is where this is the side the winds are blowing, which is very helpful from, at least from fence sitters' perspective. The other thing also is on ongoing consumer awareness, and I think that's the biggest story here. All the subsidy in the world, all the supply in the world, if there is nobody willing to write a check, all this is transient, right? The important thing is that the consumer awareness is high. And when I say awareness, I just don't mean awareness of the fact that there's an electric vehicles in the market. That's been there for a while, right? But I think it's the quality of awareness that has seen a huge shift in the last 6 months or so, from being seen as vehicles that you buy only to save money or possibly save the world. These are now seen as genuinely better vehicles, better machines that are upgrades to what people have been riding and driving so far. And the moment consumers start seeing this as an upgrade, as the next big thing, the willingness to buy, willingness to take leaps of faith, willingness to give a chance to new OEMs, willingness to pay premium goes up dramatically, right? So I think from a consumer perspective, from an environment perspective, petrol prices obviously are big help. Even if it doesn't really make a big dent in the pocket, this psychologically just makes sense, right? So I think any which way you see it, honestly, if I could paint a picture, I couldn't have painted a better picture for the EV industry the way we find ourselves today. And I'm not talking about the supply chain side. I think that's going to come up later in the discussion. I think that's really one big issue to solve for. But on the front end side, I think the tailwinds are really, really strong, much faster than we had imagined.
Right. So I just want to stick with you, Ravneet. It's very interesting what you said is that, on one side, you've got the whole kind of benefits of EVs, which is why the whole world is going towards EVs. And the other point which no one really talks about, and that comes from consumer, is that EVs are seen as a superior product. I mean, they're quieter, they're smoother, the torque is there, probably less on maintenance. So just to get your sense, the three things which consumers give priority to. Obviously, I think it's fair to say in the two-wheeler space, they're more keen on saving their pockets than the planet. I don't know whether you'd say that's a fair kind of assumption, because obviously they're super cost sensitive at that point. And the whole aspect of the EV experience, driving an electric scooter, the instant torque. What would you say is, let's say, the main reason for people, let's say, going towards electric? I mean, I would imagine saving the planet is maybe, to be honest, low down on the list.
I'll be honest, nobody wants to pay a penny to save the planet, right? Honestly, people say whatever they say socially, but nobody wants to pay any premium for that. Because fundamentally, the product has to make sense. Because if the product doesn't make sense, then you're expecting the consumer to make a compromise on what a product is meant to do, just so that they can be more conscious, and that doesn't happen in large numbers, right? So people today, if you look at our understanding of the reasons people are switching, is just a better machine that they're going to, right? And when I say that, I don't mean all the value added things like touch screen and connectivity. All those things sort of add up, but fundamentally, right? And honestly, that's the hypothesis on which we build the product as well. We said, let's build a good scooter first, and then we'll talk about the touchscreen dashboard, remote diagnostics, over-the-air updates. But because if fundamentally, if it doesn't do what a scooter is meant to do, which means that the scooter, when a consumer walks into a retail store, he or she evaluates the scooter basis the more traditional parameters of how they would have otherwise bought a petrol scooter. They look at build quality, they look at acceleration, look at top speed, handling, braking, etc. And that is fundamentally superior when it comes to electric, a well put together electric vehicle. Now, once that's done, consumer is bought now. And then when you talk about the touchscreen and remote diagnostics and all that, there's all sweeteners that allow you to maybe command a premium. But fundamentally, the shift happens when they just experience a better scooter per se, right? Not because it's electric or not about money, nothing else. Those sort of, to me, those are more peripheral, even though they may say it, but no amount of TCO can help sell a bad product fundamentally.
Right. No, that's interesting. I mean, it's as you rightly said, just taking off from your point of view, the tailwinds are very, very strong. There is a definite push to this. Obviously, the demand is going, much more than anticipated. And here's where I'd just like to turn to the supply sides, and starting off with Arjun Jain, who just joined us a bit later. Arjun, you're heading the kind of electrification business at Varroc. So just wanted your thoughts on the current situation. Has the sudden spurt in demand or interest kind of caught people unawares, and there's a huge opportunity, and what are the kind of opportunities in this ecosystem?
So in my view, I don't think at this stage in 2021, I think really anyone is unaware. I think there's been a lot of awareness. I think that's been driven over.
What I meant was the pace of, let's say, increase in potential demand. That's what I was trying to say, because clearly, I think a lot of the with so much noise going around, there's certain incumbents which haven't come, making more noise right now than actually putting products on the street. Obviously, that creates a certain awareness, and it also then leads to demand and kind of just stimulates the entire, let's say, ecosystem.
If I put it differently, I think the two-wheeler industry being at 20 million vehicles a year.
Yeah.
I don't think is unfamiliar with the idea of really being able to scale up to really meet demand per se. Right. And again, to clarify the reason I say I don't think anybody has been caught really unaware per se is because I think whether we think about new OEMs, traditional OEMs, I think most already have product on the road in some way, shape, or form. Right? I think if you have, let's say, big spurts in demand, it is always a question of scaling. And I think, from a scaling standpoint, again, there is, of course, there is new technology, there is new, and when I say new technology, not just product, but also process technology. And, scaling that is always an effort and a challenge. But, again, I think the industry exists with a level of scale already. So I think transitioning, while will be for sure will be a challenge, but I don't think will be an unimaginable sort of challenge. I think the greater risk is that honestly there will be aspects of the industry that are almost not required to transition. But again, I think if we think about it, if you think about electronics for an EV, there is electronics already on IC engine vehicles also, right? So transitioning SMT capacity, potentially transitioning some box build capacity. Of course, again, every product is unique, but is not like I think we have to sit and worry about creating capacity for 20 billion vehicles all of a sudden. At the same time, I will say, there is product lines like a traction motor, for example, which are completely new, and I think there, and especially for a supplier like us that actually makes motors, having the right manufacturing strategy almost becomes extremely critical. So, yep.
Right. No, thanks for that. So I'd just like to turn to, Kabir Bhandari, to have your thoughts on this. Arjun says that, scaling up is not a problem. Supply industry hasn't been caught unawares. But, let's be honest, the point is there is still a very, very low level of localization in this space. The point is that, the supply chain is yet to be developed. Do you think it's happening, in the right pace, in the right cadence with the demand, or more needs to be done? And, finally, that is going to be the way to lower costs when finally subsidies, possibly might go away. So just your thoughts on that, especially in the area of motors, where I think, even you all have an interest.
I think what's really interesting, okay, let me focus more on motors since that's what you asked. Couple of sort of points to anchor this. One is motors have been around forever, right? We've had ceiling fans running for more than 100 years. Number two, you don't really expect a motor to fail. There are still fans in your house, in your grandparents' houses running forever. So the technology is very sturdy. And as in everything automotive, for us, the key when we look at motors was the efficiency. Because as opposed to a motor which has been around for hundreds of years, running on supplied voltage in an industrial environment or a home environment, you're constrained by the capacity of your battery, and that's what you want to utilize as efficiently as possible. So where we really focused was to make the power curve, to make the torque curve and the efficiency curve on our motor as wide as possible. Because to draw an analogy, diesel engines were considered horrible to drive until common rail came in. And I'm not discussing anything right now from an emissions perspective or Dieselgate or anything, but I'm just saying as a technology, diesels were horrible to drive until you got common rail. And what did common rail do? Common rail actually gave you a very flat torque curve and torque available at low RPM. And if I look at a
much wider power band as well.
And much wider power band. And if I look at what's happening today in the motor space, motors all give you instantaneous torque, great power on demand, all that is there. But when you're looking at efficiency, people quote very high efficiency figures, but those are similar to having quoted a very high torque figure on an engine. What is critical is how wide is your high torque band. So to take that analogy in motors, how big is your area of peak efficiency? There's no point having 95% efficiency at an area where you don't use the motor. So for us, what we really focused on was a completely new topology of motor. It's axial flux. Axial flux is associated in the past with very high cost because of the way it was laid out. So we were able to develop an axial flux motor using conventional materials as opposed to very fancy materials for the laminations. And that's given a very power dense package and a very efficient package over a wide engine speed range, which means that over a very, very wide driving condition for the user, you get a very good efficiency. So our motor, for example, was put on a Renault Twizy, and with the same battery pack, same absolute electronics, it ran 10% further. So basically, we are going to be ready to manufacture next year with capacities, and we will ramp up the capacities as the industry needs. But I think right now there's a huge amount of fragmentation in the motors on offer, the diverse package sizes, power ranges, efficiencies, topologies. So I think there will be a narrowing down of this as people see the efficiency, because it's going to be about the value for money that the motor brings. At the end, can I run with a smaller battery pack with the same motor or not? So we really focused on efficiency and power density.
No, that's interesting. And Shivalik, before I jump to you, I think I just want to come back to Arjun on this very interesting point, which Kabir had made, is the common rail moment for the electric motor. Do you think that is going to be something transformational in motors, which could really kind of change, let's say, the appeal of EVs altogether?
No, so I agree with Mr. Bhandari completely. I think the powertrain, whether it is an engine, whether it is a motor, I think the real driver for or the real function or the real objective is always efficiency. Hence, I think a PMSM, whether it is an axial flux or whether it is radial flux, I think really is the technology, in our view at least, that is going to win out over the longer term. Of course, we believe more in the radial flux, but that's an independent point. But, again, like Mr. Bhandari said, right, I think the objective is, not just to be at a level of efficiency and torque at one point, but really to have, the largest sweet spots. And, ultimately the real objective for the efficiency is to reduce the amount of battery that you have to use, with the same amount of range. If I put it differently, right, you have a viable EV, you have to have an extremely efficient motor and controller system.
Right. I think the heart of any vehicle is what powers it, whether it's an engine, whether it's a motor. So that's very clear. And I think obviously that's going to be very transformational. But also, I think what is now becoming very, very important in vehicles, be it cars, even two-wheelers, is the whole connected tech, especially in this smartphone age. And Shivalik, I'd like to just turn to you and, just talk to you on, you've heard all the panelists speak. Moving forward, where do you see the opportunities, with the in the EV two-wheeler space? We're talking about the rush to go electric. And is it like, Ravneet said that it's gone beyond that? You've got to be giving something that is very high tech and, sometimes the connected suite of features is almost imperative.
Yeah, so thank you, Hormoz. Let me share some thoughts on my journey over the last 10, 12 years. I used to be part of a company called Mapma India, and
we met a long time back then.
A long time back, and I think I was the first 20 or 25 employees, and I was at the board for a long time. Then I moved out before I joined Sibros. And everyone asked me that, do you need maps and navigation and touchscreen systems? And Hormoz was one of the very first users of our solution, right? And he wrote about it, talked about it, and today, the touchscreen system, whether it's a Google Map or Map India, whatever it is default in every phone, in every car, right? So what was also happening at that time, about 10 years ago, was the mobile phone industry was going from I call it a dabba phone to a smartphone. And at one given time, I remember there were 276 companies that I was in touch with, selling them some kind of software solutions. Most of them don't exist today. It's consolidated into a Xiaomi or a Samsung or an Apple, etc. So same thing is happening, I think, today in the EV two-wheeler market. There are lots and lots of traders. There are also incumbent manufacturers, and everyone's trying to figure out how the next set of the market is going to go to, right? Exactly to what Ravneet said, it has to be a good product. But a couple of things that people don't realize, EV is a revolution already happening in India, especially in the e-rickshaw space. So if you go to rural India today, if you go to Western UP, Bihar, most of the auto rickshaws are flipping or already flipped to an EV auto rickshaw. And the reason for that is, in rural India, electricity is free. So once you buy this e-rickshaw, you don't have to pay for it. There's no running cost on it, right? Because farm pricing on electricity is almost free in most states, or it's minimalistic in most of the other states. So in the rural India, EV is a way of life. It's already happening. So if you go to Akola, you go to any smaller town in India, you will see a lot of these EV vehicles. So even if you see from a ROI point of view, it's a no-brainer. Now, will they want to upgrade to a nicer vehicle? Will two-wheelers become EV? Yes, of course, because at 110, 12, 15 rupees a liter, and this number may even go to 150 in the near future, it makes absolute sense to go EV. I mean, my driver, I live in Parel here, and he loves very high-end. He, whatever money he makes, he buys bikes with it, and he's going to flip to an EV. He's waiting for the right product, and this is a guy who makes 15, 20,000 rupees a month income. So there is a tectonic shift happening. Okay. Now the question is who wins and what technology wins. That time will tell. We don't know. Similar thing had happened when we went from cable TV to dish TV, right? And there were a lot of these cable wallas all over India at 40 rupees a piece and 25 rupees a piece. And Ronnie Screwvala made a big business on that. It went to Tata Sky and Dish TV, etc. The same thing is happening in the EV industry. So where I look at companies like Sibros, and we have acquired 15 OEMs in less than a year and a half globally. And some of these are mega OEMs in Europe and US, right? We have some business in India also now. And people are signing up. And why are they signing up? Because two things have happened. Data is a way of life. 4G, 5G, 3G, whatever technology you want to call it. Connectivity is there pretty much everywhere. Yes, we have blank spots. And we, 10 years ago, we used to talk about there's no internet and, I don't get network. And we still, crib and cry about Vodafone and Airtel and Jio, etc. But for the large part, all of us sitting at home right now or in offices and we're doing a Zoom call on a 100 Mbps line, which was not even imaginable 5 years ago. So data is a way of life. The person in Guwahati or the person in Kohima has the same information as the person in Bombay. We are flat, right? So if Ravneet is selling a vehicle in Ather in Bangalore, the guy in Kohima also sees the same vehicle and he wants it. And if Ravneet cannot give it to him, he'll buy it from someone else. So data is a way of life. Connectivity is something that you take for granted. It's not even an afterthought. It's a way of life. You just take it for granted, right? If you look at mobile phones from trains, every coach in India now has charging points. Nowhere in the world you have charging points like India. Every coach in India has charging points. So if I look at my own vehicle in my own building, the number of electric two-wheelers, whether it's traded or untraded, it's increasing. So if I look at from a Sibros point of view or from a connectivity point of view, lots of new products will come up. Most of my folks are ex-Tesla folks. So they were part of the Tesla journey back in the day. And they built services on top of an actual product. So it was not like you sold a car and you forgot about it, right? 8 years later, you got a new car. If you look at Tesla, it gets better and better and better as time moves on. And that's a way of life. And they protect the hardware and they keep updating the software. Same thing is going to happen in the two-wheeler space or the three-wheeler space or the four-wheeler space in India, and actually much faster because we have very cheap data, and the Indian consumer is more adoptive of new technology, unlike the American consumer or the European consumer. We love technology. Hotstar is a good example. We had 1.1 crore people watching the India-Pakistan match. Right? We just it's like a population of countries globally, right? And Hotstar was able to scale. That is another interesting thing. It did not crash. Concurrent 1.1 crore users is a big number by any angle. Okay, even from a Chinese angle. So we were able to say, so connectivity is coming in. Lots of new features will come in. So you will say, okay, I will give you 10 kilometers of extra range on your vehicle if you pay me 5 rupees more on Paytm. Such a scenario does not exist today. If you're connected, you have electronic suspensions on your two-wheeler or four-wheeler. You say, okay, I see that you're going from Manali towards Leh. Your road doesn't seem to be nice because I'm tracking you have a GPS. Mr. Shiva, I will give you a different electronic suspension. Pay me 50 rupees more. And over the air, their suspension settings will change, right? So a lot of these things will become very personalized. Today, it's a generic. So the product that you make in Bangalore and the one you sell in Delhi is all the same. There's no difference. But what will happen is just like a mobile phone. So my Apple is very different from Hormoz's, and Apple will interface with each of us differently. All these products over a connected solution with a server in the backend will interface differently for different customers. So how Kabir is making the motors will behave. It'll be connected, and you will calibrate it, and you will do different settings based on different users. So a lot of these will happen within a couple of years. It will not take a very long time, and I see it happening. So you're on mute, Hormoz.
Sorry, yeah, it's a fascinating scenario. Clearly, I think what's happened, what we couldn't imagine even 2 years back, just such a fast changing scenario and technology. And Ravneet, I'd just like to come back to you. You've heard all the panelists talk about certain tech, and while you very rightly kind of showed how EVs or how electric scooters, bikes have a distinct advantage in terms of the drive feel over, let's say, IC engine counterparts. That definitely is there. But within the competition within the two-wheeler space, electric two-wheeler space, how do you see the differentiation? Because the sense one gets is that, with all the motors being fairly common in the way they are, they're quite one-dimensional in terms of the way they feel and experience. Of course, Kabir and Arjun are saying that the motor will be the differentiator. As we said, they've got that common rail moment. Will it be the way it drives? Will it be all the tech which Shivalik has talked about? How do you differentiate yourself in what is, to be honest, right now seen as a very one-dimensional kind of experience of riding, let's say, an electric two-wheeler?
So, Thomas, whether it's the battery, whether it's the motor, whether it's the connectedness aspect of the vehicle, eventually, is all means to an end. Just because we're transitioning to, from petrol to electric in this world, it doesn't change how consumers consume brands and products. Right? So brands and products are bought for value propositions that they bring to the table. At best, technology is it serves the purpose of delivering a proposition. Now, in early stages of any category, which is where we are right now, for a transient period, technology can be a differentiator, but that's only right now, right? Hey, listen, electric motor, instant torque, it just rides amazingly well. But eventually, if there are 5 scooters with all good motors and all that, then listen,
exactly.
everybody rides well, right? And therefore, if you look at any mature category, right, there will be some vehicles which are optimized for for performance, some could be optimized for comfort, for convenience, some for range, some for something else. And where having a strong sort of a powertrain, motor, etc., it just gives you capability to deliver what is a higher need state of a customer. So today, if I look at the 450X, it's optimized for performance. It doesn't mean that I can't tone the performance down. I can't dampen the suspension and make it a more convenience-led product, right? So it just allows me I think the beauty about connectedness and a product performance that can be tweaked on the back of software is your ability to vary and is so much higher than it would be in a pure mechanical world. Because if you have the hardware capability, if you have the motor, the controller, everything else that you can manage through software, starting from where we are today, in 9 months' time, I can create a new variant, which includes, design, testing, validation, homologation, everything else, which is sort of unheard of in the traditional world. So the point I'm making is that eventually, it will behave like automotives behave. Somebody will seek performance, somebody will luxury, somebody will seek, frugality, somebody something else. And all these things that we're talking about in technology, just are means to that larger end that you pay money for.
Right. And, you've talked about the technology, we've talked about all the tech and the overall appeal of the two-wheeler. But, I just want to focus on one thing. And, I think it's quite a core issue, which is cost. Obviously, right now, subsidies are playing a big role in kind of reducing the purchase cost. And obviously, the TCO is factored into that as well. But subsidies aren't going to go on forever is what one gets, and that's what we've been hearing. Lowering costs, what is the way to that? And that's where I think the supplier side could throw some light on it, because yes, clearly we are localizing, but at a tier 2, tier 3 level, does more need to be done? Do we need more scale to localize? Because in the end, localization is all about scale. Or sometimes there's a worry that you localize in one particular technology, it's so fast evolving. Technologies might change. I mean, even in batteries, there was talk of solid state, different battery chemistries, technology. So people are even reluctant to really invest wholesale in, manufacturing at a cell level. So, just the whole issue on lowering costs, because it's such a price sensitive segment. Whatever you say, you might have people, but at the end of the day, it's going to be cost driven. So I've been sticking with you just on the whole cost issue. Then I want to turn to, our friends who are supplying the components. What is the big challenge, and what do you think is the way forward? Is scale the fundamental barrier? So just your thoughts on that.
So I think Obviously, scale does help in localization does help. Economies of scale will kick in, but today I think there is still money on the table, also at a design level itself. A lot of our costs takeout that we've done the last couple of years, it's not on the back of scale at all. It's really about value engineering and just looking at our design, because especially for newer players coming in who don't have decades of understanding of automotive, there's a lot of flab sitting in design itself. So and here I think there is an opportunity for OEM suppliers to work together, starting from a design more than just saying, listen, this is one mature design. Now I'm giving you more scale, and you have 10 OEMs to talk to, and let's look at let's talk volume. That phase will come in. Personally, to me, I don't think that's the bigger upside today where we sit. And that's what we've been doing with a supplier partner, saying, can we just work together and just look at taking inefficiencies out of our design? And like I said, there's a lot of flab sitting still in a lot of products, right? And once you suck the juice out of that aspect, right? I think then in parallel your volumes are scaling up, OEMs are coming in, etc., and then sort of scale starts kicking in. So I think different points in time, different drivers of cost takeout will become more relevant.
Right. So that's a good point, actually. Two ways of looking at it. One is, get more efficiency into the system, into the development process to reduce the costs vis-a-vis, with the scale effect. Arjun, just coming to you, again, the whole issue of localization, the whole issue of the supply chain development. And I'm not just talking about tier one, I'm talking about tier two, tier three, going down the entire supply chain, to kind of look, we are a 20 million two-wheeler market. So, we know the potential is there. But is finally scale the hindrance, or can more cost efficiency be squeezed out of just clever design, clever optimization, and just being more efficient? So just wanted your thoughts on this as well.
No. So I think the first thing that I would again kind of repeat is I think localize. I think the last time I was on here maybe a year ago, I think I made a big deal out of this, but I think localization is imperative. I think unless you have localization, you don't potentially achieve subsidies. You don't. You don't have the right kind of cost structure, or a cost structure that is familiar to the country. So I think localization is imperative. And I think maybe I was not very clear the first time I spoke today, but today for us at Varroc, for every electronic component in the EV, we are already localized, right? So that's why I said that scaling is not necessarily as much of a concern per se. In my view, honestly, I would agree with a lot of what Mr. Fopela said in terms of, I think at different points of time, there's different levers that really kind of help you achieve, greater cost efficiency. But, if I think about it from a supplier's perspective, right, the upfront investment itself to make the localization happen, having a level of security around that, I think is really, really critical, right? And, hence, for example, the OEMs that we would also want to work with, are the ones that there is a level of confidence that there is going to be a quality, reliable product that is made, right? Because now, if you invest, let's say, for example, 25 crores into a traction motor line, and your customer's vehicle is catching fire, issues in the battery pack or something, that, in my view, is a much larger risk today than necessarily whether you're going to reduce 100 rupees or 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees out of the the cost of really the product, right? I'd also further agree. I think with how new so much of this technology is, and I think Mr. Bhandari also talked a little bit about how moving away from fancy materials to more, let's say, normal materials which can generate really the same level of efficiencies. But given how new some of these technologies are, especially from a mass production standpoint, I think there is a lot more scope today really in the value engineering rather than in the scaling per se. I think general rule of thumb, I would say in some products, what we see already, right? There's some products where at a level of 200,000 you're at scale, because at that point you have to start duplicating capacity. There's other products where maybe at 1 million you're at scale, because after that you start duplicating capacity. So in a market which is 20 million in size, in my view, that scale benefit is not really something that makes at least us too nervous. And I think from a supply chain standpoint also, I think driving the localization in the tier 2 and the tier 3, I genuinely don't see this as too much of a challenge. There is certain components which are, of course, more critical, certain child parts, which are of course more critical based on the functionality expected of them. But again, we have a very I might be a little bit biased because I'm from traditional industry, but we have a very strong industry that already exists. Really, if you think about a two-wheeler IC engine today, right, it's a world-class product. We talk a lot about iPhones, and we talked about iPhones earlier, but IC engine two-wheeler like an Activa is cheaper than an iPhone, right? So it is a pretty sophisticated piece of technology, maybe not as much software, but really the building blocks of it really is in the manufacturing. So it's not that there's an industry that does not exist to localize.
Right. No, that's a very interesting and some very key inputs you've given, Arjun. And what I would take away is that for you, really localization down the supply chain, not so much of a constraint. It's really the risk when you invest in certain thing to be assured of a certain volume. Kabir Bhandari, just like to turn to you and taking off from where he said, would you agree that that in terms of the way our cost structure is, the kind of break-even point or the ROI for, let's say, investment comes at a much lower point, and obviously the overall potential of the two-wheeler market, really doesn't give you too much worry on the scale effect. And also a very interesting point is the value engineering, which really is, let's say, the strength of a lot of the Indian suppliers of substituting expensive materials for more traditional ones as we learn. So, your also thoughts on this whole issue of lowering costs vis-a-vis the supplier side.
Thanks. I agree with a lot of what Arjun said and a lot of what Ravneet said about scale and about value engineering. I'll just look at this from a slightly different perspective, given that we already have a market for 20 million two-wheelers. So fundamentally, that market is at scale. And what are the different parts for an IC two-wheeler versus an EV? And if you look at stuff like chassis, tires, seats, ABS, a lot of these things are pretty mature, common.
Yeah.
From whatever I understand in discussions, the key cost factor is a battery. And then if you flip that the other way, a key risk factor is a battery. Look at the battery fires that have happened. So, if you don't get your battery chemistry right, or there's a shortcut in manufacturing the battery, because again, there are batteries available principally from China at prices ranging from, if you take a good battery at 100% price, you'll get batteries at something like 20-25% price. And so, as I understand it, also the biggest challenge is in the investment to make batteries. Because if you look at motors, you look at these things, these are mechanical engineering components which you can make at a lower scale, higher scale. Like Arjun said, some parts have scale which comes at 10,000, some parts have scale which come at 1 million. Those are all easy and containable and calculatable. Where for me, at least from my point of view, the wild card is much more in the battery, because the investments are very high, very high if you want to do it as in make the fundamental cell. And then there are lots and lots of changes coming because battery technology is evolving very quickly. So are you going to put in a huge investment and then suddenly find your process is completely obsolete? I would say I want to make an axial flux motor. Arjun wants to make a radial flux motor. We put in some machines. You have winding machines, you have stamping machines, you have overmolding machines. Tomorrow, Arjun can start saying, I'll make an axial flux because my call on radial was not okay. I can say I'll make a radial flux because my call on axial was not okay. There's a certain amount of flexibility in your investments. Obviously, it's not nice for the investment not to do exactly what you wanted, but you have flexibility. Whereas my impression is if you set up battery manufacturing, there's not that much flexibility upfront. And that's a fundamental cost driver today in the EV. And apart from that, of course, you've looked at your global chip shortages. Now, why aren't semiconductors made? Because there's huge investment in making them. So those are the two areas where I don't see too much price flexibility right now, the battery and the power electronics. The rest of the stuff is all within our purview, within our experience, within our abilities to optimize it, to value engineer it, to design it smarter.
Right. No, that's yeah. I think that's yeah. I think it's quite clear, as I think both of you all have said, that clearly scale comes at different levels, and obviously there are investments in certain hardware. But turning to you, Shivalik, where you are, you have the maximum flexibility, which is largely on the software side. So just looking at from your point of view, again, the cost factor. Where do you think costs can be reduced? Does software play a big role in this, or is it more a value enhancement for the product?
No, I think software plays a big role. If I look at it today, what we have seen, and these are my vehicle designers, ex-Tesla guys and Faraday guys, etc. As Ravneet said, there's a lot of fat in the system. You don't need to use a specific chipset because there's no need. It's an overkill. If you're making a 1 lakh rupee scooter, you don't need that particular chipset or that particular Android dashboard. A lot of these things are an overkill. So you can actually reduce a lot of cost from that. Second is the bigger problem, I think, more than the cost is what the TVS joint MD said. The supply of skilled manpower. That's a huge problem, right? And we are struggling, and every OEM and every tier one that I talk to is struggling because we don't have the engineering talent base right now on the electronic side or on the embedded electronic software side in India, who can really rapidly, change things. So, for example, if you look at Tesla today, they did not have any chip problems, right? Because they had backup designs on different chips, and within 15, 20 days, they were able to flip over the entire chip designs for their ECUs, right? But if you look at Maruti today, they struggled, and they're really struggling for chip shortages, right? And the reason for that is, unable to do flexible design. So as the two-wheeler industry is a 20 million vehicle industry, we don't have a semiconductor fab in India except for what Bharat Electronics has for the Indian defense. We need very, very good designers on the electronics and embedded side, firmware designers who can, really future-proof us. And that is a big gap. You talk to any OEM, any tier one, that's what they're going to say. So if we get that in place in the next few years, say 2-3 years, and everyone's working on it, we should be able to do a lot of value engineering. We should be able to cut out a lot of the cost. I would think the margins for the two-wheeler OEM and tier one should go through the roof in the years to come, because you look at Tesla, right? It's a good example. They had 30% margin in the last report that they did, and software will be a good play on that. So on a same hardware, think about it. Almost you can have every win can be customized for everyone, right? Today, if you look at Hyundai, has the most number of combinations, electric vehicle or petrol and diesel and multiple engine capacities and low end, mid and high end,
and multiple power transmissions as well.
Transmission as well, right? And now I can have exactly what Ravneet was saying, right? I can have one vehicle with a higher torque and one with a lower torque, and so I go online on my app, I order a vehicle. That software configuration is already homologated. End of line, it gets flashed onto that onto the multiple ECUs on that motorcycle or the two-wheeler or scooter, which is EV in this case. I get a custom designed vehicle for myself. I don't like it. I pay another 1,000 rupees and I reflash it again, right? That does not exist today. So there are many new revenue streams that don't exist today will pop up. The question is who will be able to grab it? That is a bigger question, right? But it's there. I can see it.
Right. That's interesting. Sticking to the new revenue streams, the new opportunities within the ecosystem, and let's say outside the product itself, whether it's charging infrastructure or other, connected services. How big do you think that opportunity is? Shivalik, sticking with you, and then just want to ask the other panelists as well. I know, let's say Arjun and Kabir are more on the hardware side, but there's a huge ecosystem evolving around the EV two-wheeler space, which goes beyond the product itself. So just want to understand how big an opportunity is that?
It's a very, very large opportunity. It actually may be bigger opportunity than selling the vehicle itself. Because right now what happens is you sell the vehicle, you sell the part, and you have moved on in life, right? And then you come back after 7 years and you sell him another vehicle. Here you can sell him something every month. It's a subscription model, right? Or you sell him a new like, I have a different flavor of Android and I want a Tamil flavor of Android and I'm willing to pay 100 rupees extra for it, right? It doesn't cost you anything. It's just putting a new file on the server and you're just streaming it into the vehicle, right? It's pure 100 rupees to the bottom line. Now, whether the cluster supplier gets it or the OEM gets it, that's a different discussion. But that's free money, literally.
Right.
And there are many use cases like this. If you look at Swiggy and Zomato, they are delivering. They will pay some extra money to see what is the BMS status on the vehicle, so then they can do the dispatch calculations. And they can pay you, 50 paisa extra per dispatch calculation or 20 paisa extra, right? That doesn't exist, and they charge it back to the customer, right?
Right.
So a lot of these value streams, no one's even thought about it right now.
Right.
There are, we have identified like 400 such use cases, which we will enable. Who will get the money in that? That is between the OEMs and the big tier ones, but it exists, and that will actually be a much bigger revenue generator than actually selling the two-wheeler.
Right.
And the power guys also, electricity. If you
Right.
see what Volkswagen is doing in Europe, they bundle 3 years of charging with the vehicle that you buy, right? In India, you're expected to, charge it at home. Why can't Tata Power bundle along with, I don't know, TVS and they give me a aggregate pack, and then they in the back end will do a credit swap and all kinds of things. So all those things will come, and it'll happen very, very fast within 2-3 years.
Right. And I'll just jump to you, Ravneet, on this, this opportunity in the ecosystem or within the ecosystem, which goes beyond the product itself. Clearly, there's so much developing, which is so specific, to the electric space. Is that something that needs to, in tandem, let's say, develop very, very fast? I mean, we've talked about the obvious, which is charging infrastructure. That's talked, that's pretty obvious. But I'm saying beyond that.
I think I totally agree with you. I think there's a truckload of opportunity here. And this is, I think there is a fundamental shift in the potentially. When I say potentially, I don't mean whether it will happen or not. It's really a question of time. When your hardware margins on sale will not be really the biggest driver of your revenues, because not only are these multiple revenue streams opening up, and they're at different stages of maturity, whether it's from a consumer perspective or a ecosystem perspective, but certainly you can see it, right? So not only are the multiple revenue opportunities, but potentially a lot of them are recurring revenue opportunities. And that fundamentally changes the business model for anything, right? Right from the OEM to our dealer partners, et cetera, from the servicing. So, even if I, look at what we can do today, which we can enable, which we haven't, there's tons on the charging side. I can charge differently for different speed of charging, for example. You're in a hurry, you pay more money. I'll enable it. If you have enough time, don't spend the money, do slow charging. So there is charging, we have connectivity packs, we have subscription packs, we have AMCs and all that. We have remote diagnostics and sorting things out. Things that fundamentally today because we are in an early stage, we don't really monetize it a lot because we really want to build habit and do what in FMCG you call sampling. So let people, understand the goodness of all these new opportunities, a new value proposition. And once there is reasonable awareness in the market, that's when you start sort of monetizing that. But I'll tell you, this is. I come from the mobile phone world. I used to be Nokia for many years, and early days of smartphones, you could feel it under your skin that there is truckloads you can do because there is capability, fundamental hardware capability. There's touchscreen connectivity. But it took like 4, 5, 7 years to really unravel the power of that machine in your hand. I think from automotive, we are really there. You can feel it. Like people in this business understand it, but I think it will be a while before you figure out what sticks and what doesn't. But I think the opportunity is immense.
Right. No, that's. I think that's really a whole new area, a whole new opportunity in this whole EV ecosystem. But we are running out of time, and I just want to come to one very important topic, which is what is actually driving growth, not just in India, but everywhere in the EV space, and that is legislation. And just want to talk to the, key suppliers. Okay, we've got, let's say, obviously the subsidies when you buy the vehicles. But on the supplier side, do you think what's being done, does anything need to be done right now? Obviously, there's this big debate going on that CBU still need to be taxed as much as IC vehicles from an import duty perspective. What do you think is the way forward in kind of, let's say, legislation to reduce costs and to kind of, let's say, proliferate EVs at an even higher level? Arjun, I'd start with you.
Okay, I think I think legislation will be whatever is legislation, right? I think is always a little bit of a wild card. I think what can happen. I think there's a lot of people that speak to the government, and of course, being a global supplier, it's a similar topic, all over the world, right? So to quote an example, a parallel example from lighting, something like anti-glare technology, which is very common in Europe today, is still illegal in the US right now. Right. So, I think our view on legislation generally is, I think is an uncontrollable factor, right? It's something that will kind of evolve as the industry evolves, right? I think there was a point a little bit earlier that was being made in terms of, in terms of our core focus, right? There was a point earlier being made in terms of, availability of manpower, etc. I think in terms of our core focus, the way we look to address legislation, or to address the risk or the opportunity of legislation is really to be prepared, really, for the components that we make, really with, super sets of capabilities almost that might be required, right? So now again, to give you a parallel, let's say, from lighting, right? Just because anti-glare is not yet legal in the US does not mean that we don't spend a significant amount of R&D effort on anti-glare across different methods of achieving anti-glare, as a lighting company. So, similarly, even if you think about the EV space, right, even though, let's say, we have our own stuff on the motor, there's other guys also, around that we work with. An example around telematics and connectivity, we have a partnership with, we have a partnership with a company in Pune called Car IQ, which, for example, has significant amount of India experience, right? And of course, the Indian, climate, weather condition, etc., is always, I think, extremely unique. So, I think more than legislation, I think the way I would put it is we look to focus much more in terms of making sure that whichever direction, or to the best of our ability, whichever direction the market potentially evolves, we are scalable, but also very critically, flexible with solutions that really kind of impact, the hardware, or in some cases also, hardware plus that we're really involved in. And, to drive this, I think in particular, what we really look to pay attention to is, what is unique about India, because, let's be honest, this is in the two-wheeler, at least at this scale, this is only happening in India, right? So this is really the most critical market for us.
Right. Thanks, Arjun. Kabir, turning to you, I think from Arjun's point of view, he's not too worried about legislation. From what I understand, there are bigger issues. I just want to turn to you. Do you think more can be done in terms of legislation, or let's even at least having consistent policies, which sometimes tend to change quite rapidly? And then, of course, this game is all about long lead times and investment. While you can have a certain level of flexibility, consistency in legislation always helps. Is just your thoughts on what can be done? Is enough being done? And again, this whole issue of, well, it's more in the four-wheeler space, where do you really have punitive taxes on imports for EVs, or do you lessen it just so that EVs can proliferate and then trickle down where you can then it kind of filters down to the more localized products?
Fundamentally, my philosophy has always been to try and see what a trend is, and then run with that independent of policy. Obviously, policy influences trends. And just to cite an example of in policy for me was, for example, what happened many years ago, if you remember, when 10-seater vehicles suddenly became exempt from lower excise duty.
Lower excise duty, I think.
Every Omni was fitted with 10 seats. Guys bought it and took out the 10 seats. So, that for me is policy skewing behavior completely. So my view on EVs is that it's an unstoppable trend for many reasons. It's more fun to drive. It's way better for the environment, whichever way you cut it. Even if you have a poor mix of electricity like India does today, if you just look at it logically, it's easier to control the emission of a power plant than control the emission of 1 million vehicles. So
especially at a street level.
Yeah, given that, and then I think for the younger generation, climate concern is really a big thing for us. But if you talk to the younger generation under 30, they are far more scared of what's coming than than us in our, at least for me, speaking for myself in my late 50s. So I just think that EVs is an unstoppable trend. How fast it plays out is a different issue. Policy will influence that to a certain extent, or to a great extent. But I think as a trend, it's unstoppable.
Right.
And we need to be behind it.
Yeah. Shivalik, very, very quickly, taking off from the EVs, of course, we know is an unstoppable trend. How quickly it accelerates depends a lot on policy and legislation. So clearly, I think both Arjun and Kabir are not too fussed with the way legislation is going. They're quite confident that, just the whole wave kind of overrides everything. And, from a business point of view, there's certain security in the fact that the direction is rapid. It's the trajectory is very high. But again, my question really is can something be done with legislation and policy to kind of, let's say, smoothen the kind of transition without any bumps or speed breakers along the way?
This is my personal take. It's not a company take. My personal take is the government is going to end IC engine two-wheelers in the next few years, right? Once all the big giants are aligned, the tier ones are aligned, and production is happening and things are a little stabilized, there will be a sunset legislation coming out. And our biggest import bill is fuel right now. And okay, except this coal thing that has happened in the last 1 or 2 months, most of the power plants in India have excess electricity capacity. And we are ramping up green energy in an exponential level. Government will shift us, whether if you look at what Gadkari is doing or what Prime Minister has been talking about, even the opposition in the states, everyone's, Aditya Thackeray here in Maharashtra, everyone's aligned onto EV, right? Everyone. Like there's no one politician who's not aligned to EV in India. I've not come across any. So you will see a big legislation coming in the next few years, maybe even before the next election, I would think.
Right. With that, Ravneet, turn to you. I mean, on that, it's actually quite a definitive note to end this session on, is that finally a legislation will come which will ban IC vehicles. I mean, I think that's just, it probably will. We've seen developed markets talk about cars, UK, other markets that, no more IC vehicles. Obviously, we haven't made this statement right now. It is a very sensitive issue because let's face it, from a, let's say, affordability perspective or whatever perspective, people still need or rely on IC vehicles to a great extent. But in terms of legislation, is that what you think will be the ultimate kind of end game for IC vehicles, and then just everyone has to jump into EVs whether they like it or not? And you've kind of started a little early in this race. So is that something you're betting on, or irrespective of that, you're just betting on the fact that your products are just having a pull on their own, irrespective of legislation?
Listen, I don't think we are relying on legislation to do anything. We had a short-term reliance on policy by way of subsidy, which in any case we assume is going to go in a couple of years or so. So nobody is looking at a business model that assumes subsidies beyond 2.5 years or so. So I think that the move is inevitable, is going to happen. Legislation might shave off the last maybe 2-3 years of transition, but it's happening without legislation. Honestly, this not going to stop.
Right. Well, with that, I think we will end this session. I'm going to take, I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions, possibly just one, which we have. So let me just get into that. And I think, Ravneet, this one is for you. We've got a question from Mukesh Saraf. His question is, currently for a typical EV scooter, what are the key components that are imported versus localized? Also in terms of value, what would percentage would be imported content be? And how do you see this change in 3 to 5 years?
I can't speak for the industry. I can just speak for ourselves. For us, other than the cells, which we have no choice but to import, everything is locally sourced. So 99% of our non-cell bill of materials is all locally sourced from India. Now, some child parts from our supplier partners come from overseas, but really we have no control over that. So we've gone for localization in a big way, one is from a cost perspective, secondly, control on technology, control on supply chain, a bunch of reasons, right? And that's, that's as Arjun said, I think that's the only way to do it.
Right. Well, I think I think we are running late for the next panel, so I'm just going to end this over here. But I think with your answer to that question and what both Kabir and Arjun have said, the supply chain really isn't much of an issue. There's a high level of localization right down to tier 2, tier 3, right down the supply chain. So I think in that sense, everyone is ready to kind of, let's say, embrace this rush towards EVs, which is inevitable. How fast it happens, that remains to be seen, but quite clearly, it's happening faster than we think. Gentlemen, thank you very much for this very enlightening and stimulating conversation. And thanks so much for joining us. And I'll hand it back to our moderator, Mayank. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much. Pleasure being here. Thank you so much.
Very nice to meet you. Very nice to meet everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Hormuz, and thank you to all the panelists. That was a very incisive discussion, replete with some insightful thoughts. And thank you, Hormuz, for summing it up very nicely. Good morning once again. We shall now move into the technical presentation session, and today's presentation is on the topic DSM Engineering Materials Energizing the Wheels. I would like to invite Mr. Amit Tolani, Business Development Manager, Automotive, DSM Engineering Materials. Mr. Tolani has over 15 years of experience in automotive value chain in introducing new technologies and developing applications in powertrain, body design, auto electronics, and interior exterior components. Before I hand it over, I would like to request our audience to type in their questions in the Q&A box, and we would be happily taking them with Mr. Tolani at the end of the presentation. Over to you, Mr. Tolani.
Yeah, hi, thank you, Mayank, and good morning and warm welcome to all of you on the Autocar Two-Wheeler Week today. So it has really been great listening to everyone since yesterday, and even today morning session was really fantastic, which has given a lot of insights to all of us. So Mayank has already introduced me, and thank you, Mayank, for that. So I will just share my screen and let me know, Mayank, once it is visible, then I can start over. Yeah, is it visible? If Mayank, you can just confirm me back.
Yes, Mr. Tolani, we are good to go.
Yeah, so once again, good morning to all, and welcome on behalf of DSM to all the attendees here. Please feel free to post your comments and also mention your questions. I'll be glad to answer and take them up. So in today's agenda, we'll speak about a few glimpses about DSM, a couple of market trends and developments that we see as engineering materials, applications and material innovations in ICE engines and body parts, electromobility with DSM, carbon footprint reduction with DSM engineering materials, and the capabilities that DSM possesses. So DSM is a global purpose-led science-based company which is specializing in nutrition, health, and sustainable living. The purpose is to create brighter lives for all. DSM was founded in 1902 and is listed on Euronext at Amsterdam. DSM Engineering Materials serves a diversified industry base, and the materials catered to automotive, electronics, electrical, food, consumer goods, and the medical industry. The materials from DSM cater to a variety of applications, and these are in two-wheelers, cars, commercial vehicles, railways, smartphones, tablets, laptops, and even to many safety-critical applications like airbag canisters and brake booster valve bodies. DSM is an innovator in high-performance materials and has a broad material portfolio, which includes product range in PBT, PET, Nylon 6, 66, 46, and 410. DSM's Nylon 6 has been a great saver today in the market as well when the industry is facing tough times with supply challenges. Nylon 6 has not only supported as a quick drop-in solution during the Nylon 66 supply challenges, but has also given many met many cost-saving targets looking at the customer's applications. Other grades like Zytron, which is PPS, and Ecopax and Stanil 410, Stanil 46 are the high-performing materials from DSM, Stanil is also a material which is used for many wear and friction applications. 40 are portfolio from DSM, which are very close to PEEK and replaces PEEK in many applications. As the economy is advancing, the automotive industry is seeing two mega trends today. We all heard since yesterday, sustainability and new technology. So sustainability speaks about using the right resources, looking at the climate, energy, and circularity. Also, the new technology is speaking about new mobility like EV, shared mobility, etc. We have connectivities coming up and also artificial intelligence that is driving the automotive world. As DSM, we are enabling our customers to create sustainable solutions by having bio-based products and recycled products which are sourced from oceans and repurposed. We also believe in using safer ingredients in our products, which are halogen-free and red phosphorus-free, and also renewable electricity in our operations. Very proud to share that in India, in Pune itself, our operations are powered by our own solar fields. The other trend in the industry that we are seeing today is about the rapid shift of technology to the new mobility, connectivity, and artificial intelligence. This technology shift is asking for innovative high-performance materials. These materials support the ICE optimization, electrification, and connectivity. DSM's innovative materials here support by being able to use at high temperatures, reduced emissions, and also for applications in electrical and electronic connectors, which can work at thickness as low as 0.2 mm and still deliver V0 properties. Couple of applications and material innovations that I will share for ICE engines and body parts. What are the major two-wheeler key requirements that we see today and beyond? Safety. So safety is of prime importance. As engines are becoming hotter and EVs are occupying more space in the market, selection of right temperature materials and right flame retardant materials is becoming the key. Reducing emissions, optimizing the engine size, connectivity, lightweighting, and reducing carbon footprint. So materials here also play an important role when it comes to reducing carbon footprint. And you can see here that compared to fossil-based fuels and bio-based fuels, how low the carbon footprint is there. And of course, I will talk about this further also in my coming slides. Wear and friction is a most important aspect in ICE engines. So Stanil is a wear and friction material and is enhanced with wear and friction performance properties. It is able to meet high load and high gear durability requirements that conventional polymers do not meet. Stanil PA46 allows for compact design, better thermal performance, and saves design space. It also helps in reducing weight and saves cost. Stanil is a high-performance aliphatic polyamide which can work up to 230 degrees C continuous use temperature. It has a melting point as high as 295 degrees Celsius, and due to its high crystallization and high crystallinity, it offers three exclusive properties, which are wear and friction, superior flow, and stiffness at high temperature. It is therefore used in applications like gears, actuators, chain guides, and bearing cages. In these applications, it gives us strengths like wear and friction and high temperature mechanics. It is also used in applications like electrical and electronics, where you need very thin wall designs and also high flow and high mechanics at high temperature. Air management is an interesting application where nowadays we seek stiffness at very high temperature as Indian temperatures are going. So continuous use temperatures up to 230 degrees C are quite very well possible with Stanil PA46. Also, when it comes to temperatures at the gears and other mating parts, it is more over time observed that the temperature at the mating parts and at the tooth area is much higher than it is estimated. And you can see here that compared to POM and PA66 at high temperature, Stanil delivers almost 150% higher tensile strength, and versus PA66, 45% higher tensile strength compared to nylon and POP. Stanil also allows space saving, and even compared to higher performance grade like PPA, Stanil can operate at lower thicknesses. It offers 20 times longer lifetime, 60% more torque capability. It gives 30% space saving by reducing the gear width without compromising on the performance, and 30% lower weight. It is already being used successfully for many decades on applications like oil pump gear and starter motor gear in two-wheelers. Many other applications in automotive, in passenger cars, are using Stanil for gears, actuators, and even for comfort actuator applications. Another interesting application that I will share in the ICE engines is the cylinder head cover. And DSM's key strength has also been here with nylon 6. Many applications have converted from nylon 6.6 to nylon 6 in cylinder head cover, and also a consideration to metal is made here. When we compare metal and nylon 6, a weight reduction of almost 40% can be secured by converting from metal to nylon 6. Flatness is a critical aspect here for giving a leak-proof assembly. And DSM's Aculon K224 HG6 and HG7 heat stabilized grades are suitable and give very less warpage even at high temperatures. The grades are suitable for welding and give continuous use temperatures up to 170 degrees C. They give fantastic oil aging performance, already tested, and are already being successfully used for motorcycles, scooters, and motorcycles 125cc as well. A new trend that we are seeing today, or is already there from a long time, is emissions, but is getting focused more and more. Fuel emissions is also a subject of interest for the legislations today. We already heard a lot around the legislation this morning, and again, fuel emission is also a subject related to the same. DSM's innovative material solution is Aculon Fuel Lock here, which is a low permeation solution. Compared to conventional materials that are used, the Aculon Fuel Lock grade offers a monolayer solution and is not required to do multi-layer solutions like we do with the conventional fuel tanks. It also gives a flexibility to eliminate the secondary process of fluorination coatings. It has got fantastic impact performance and works at lower and reduced thickness. The graph here you can see that a thickness at 2 mm gives a fuel permeation rate of 0.5 grams per meter square per day, and the thickness can be brought down up to as low as 1.2 mm, of course suited up to the design and requirements. A blow molded and injection molding, both the kind of solutions are available in DSM's material portfolio for Aculon Fuel Lock. Already many passenger cars across the globe have shifted to this kind of technology, and we see a lot of success as we move forward in the materials. An interesting application that I wanted to share is about the paint elimination. So there are a lot of body parts today in the vehicle that undergo painting. And as we speak about sustainability, GHG, and reducing the carbon footprint, the paint elimination is another interesting topic where many OEMs and tiers are looking at. DSM has come up with solutions in nylon 6, which gives fantastic gloss requirements. They qualify for scratch resistance, stone pelting, and impact resistance, and resistance to engine heat. The gloss values you can see can be achieved as high as 98 gloss units. And of course, what we get in return is elimination of the painting process. So it saves the secondary process and it gives cost saving as well as reduced carbon footprint. Yeah, let us move to another interesting topic, which is about electromobility. And today's topic also, as I read this morning, was the race to go electric. So quite relevant and what are the EV material needs that we are seeing for the electric vehicles. So as we are going forward with EV, battery management, integrated electronics, and improving distance per charge are becoming critical. With this, a need for thermal management is derived. There is a need for strong EMI shielding, and there is a need for lightweighting, which will give us more efficiency per charge. So thermal management and flame retardancy are the most important factors to be considered while we select materials in the battery management system. As I already mentioned, safety is most important, and flame retardant material with halogen-free and red phosphorus-free are a key from DSM. They offer V0 properties at as low as 0.2 mm. Very important to maintain the battery temperature for giving a high or a good efficiency, I will say. And therefore, a heat dissipation material is a choice from DSM. So DSM has come up with solutions that those are thermally conductive and give very good heat flow. So vehicles are becoming unattended appliances. As we see going forward, we just keep the vehicle for charge and we allow them to charge. So vehicles are becoming unattended appliances in future. And the tests focus on heat formation, spread of flame, smoke, density, and toxicity. An increased amount of high power electronics together with high voltage electrification are raising the FR bar in future. So thermal management is very important, and also it is becoming important in different applications. So e-motors, electrical parts, and connectors are having an important role to play in the whole electric vehicle. As these are supporting miniaturizations and enhancing the efficiency of the vehicle, applications such as end caps, bobbins, coils, and bus bars are becoming potential applications for engineering materials, and DSM's engineering material can support here the cause of miniaturization and efficiency enhancement. High flow, FR, and CTI up to 600 volts are available in DSM's product portfolio and also used for high voltage connectors in ECU and other VCU applications. Here is a range of thermally conductive grades that offer thermal conductivity right from 1.6 to 14 watts per meter Kelvin in plain and 0.8 to 2.1 watts per meter Kelvin in the plastics range from DSM engineering materials. Let me share you a fantastic example of Stanil PA46 that has delivered value against nylon 66 and PBT. By reducing the wall thickness of the material that you see here with the help of Stanil, we are able to increase the number of turns and therefore in return enhance the efficiency of the material. Although you see this application is very small, but it has given a very important efficiency enhancement to many motors and many other electrical applications. Here is the strength that you see by using Stanil PA46 that can be delivered and enhance the efficiency of your product. Another interesting application is for the ECU housing, which needs a thermal conductivity, and a grade from DSM, which is Stanil TC502, was used here to enhance the thermal efficiency of the part and also reduce the weight. The part here is used with a combination of hybrid, which is metal, and DSM engineering materials, Stanil TC502, which in turn help to reduce the weight of the overall component and achieve the necessary performance. EV charging. So what are the material requirements that we need for EV charging? UV resistance material, strength and durability, materials that should be compliant with UL and IEC regulations, that is the yellow card, and also materials that have a strong supply chain and a good track record. As we heard this morning, what are the components that could be localized in India? Most of them imported today. I think these are one of the future components that we will see most of localizations happening in India, and therefore the material choices are clear to pick up. Couple of recommended materials from DSM solutions which are already being used globally. So housings can be made with Aculon K224AG6, which is a nylon 6 30% glass-filled heat stabilized grade. The direct contact parts from Aculon, which need FR V0 performance and halogen-free grades, are also available with DSM. Charging infrastructure is a new trend and will see more and more capturing the roads now and then. DSM already ready with the materials which are also able to be used in the outside environment and have F1 listings. Electromagnetic interference. So electromagnetic interference is a very interesting topic, and let me start with some basic on this topic. So what is electromagnetic interference? I hope most of the electrical, electronic guys sitting here, they all know this, but I will just share some insights from my side. So sometimes the EMI is also referred to as the radio frequency. Just in very simple terms, these are the sources that are rapidly changing the electrical currents. So is this a problem? Yes, it is. And we live in a world with a lot of devices, and it is also increasing the EMI pollution and EMI noise. This interruption can cause devices to underperform or stop. Some damages is sound also. So I am pretty sure that most of us would have experienced this kind of interference in daily life, which we do very less nowadays. But earlier, if you would have seen your old mobile phones, and even before a text message arrived on your phone and you had some speakers around your computer, you would hear some buzzing sound. This was nothing but an electromagnetic interference. In today's world, what we hear today and what we see more today is whenever we are traveling in an aircraft, we would have seen that during the landing and takeoff, we are generally asked to switch off our mobile phones. This is nothing but very simple. It is an EMI, to avoid the radars. We are asked to do so that it does not cause harm to the other devices that are operating. So there are basically three ways to handle it. In simple terms, don't reduce it. I don't think that is possible, but yes, that is one of the way. The second one is to filter it, and the third one is to shield it. And today we are going to talk about shielding and shielding materials. So basically why it is relevant to us as an engineering material producer. And we are actually seeing the two trends in automotive industry, which are basically also linked to the electromagnetic interference. So we see that there are a number of increased components in an EV today. And the other challenge is also to keep all these electronic components in a very confined space. Be it a two-wheeler or be it a four-wheeler, the challenge today is optimizing the space. And putting them all in a confined space will of course cause the radio frequencies to change and therefore cause damage to the components. Already moving from ICE, we have introduced high power motors, which are a major source to the EMIs. We have the inverters, and we have other components like infotainment systems, the housings for ECUs, and the outside vehicle radio frequencies also. So sharing something on material. So the metals are traditionally good shielders, yeah, but they have certain cons. And the cons that we see here is the high cost of the CNC machining, the extra space need for screwing and sealing, and also the high weight of the components. Industry already moved to metallized plastic cover and plastic cover with the foil. But this was a little challenging that was seen in the automotive industry due to the external environment and thermal shocks. So due to external environment, there is quite a chance that these kind of metallization or the plastic covers may get scratched or damaged, which in return will cause a damage to the radio frequency interference. Therefore, DSM's new approach is with using a high conductive plastic cover, which does not need any kind of metal sheet or foil or a paint. So it has an inbuilt capability to EMI shield the component. It caters to sufficient radio frequency and thermal conductivity, and it is quite possible to achieve a 45 to 60 dB of shielding along with thermal conductivity. It helps to reduce the weight of the component. It gives sufficient design flexibility. Heat transfer is possible due to thermal conductivity and minimum assembly steps. Basically, a lot of part integration is also possible here. So what is the value of using conductive plastic? So the value of using conductive plastic is it offers design freedom, lower weight, high productivity. That means a longer tool life, as a plastic tool life gives as much as 1 million shots compared to an aluminum tool of 0.2 million. It does not require any kind of secondary process like drilling, sanding, or painting, and therefore it is a single step process. So quite relevant topic for the EVs, and EMI shielding are becoming more and more important. Couple of applications that DSM is doing in the EV era, and many proven and many to come. So as we talked, EMI shielding, the lighting, the ECU housings, battery management systems with thermally conductive and FR grade, sensors, ADAS, gears. I already spoke about a high performing material Stanellia, applications in e-motors where there is a very good scope to reduce the size of the component and enhance the efficiency, high voltage systems connectors, charging plugs, and couple of body part applications. So rear grip is also one of the body part application, which can be looked at as a paint elimination with DSM's UV stabilized grades. So DSM's energized portfolio for EV complies of high CTI materials, high CUT materials, less hygroscopic materials, and excel in flow grades like Stanley. As I spoke in my agenda about the carbon footprint reduction, so let me take some time here to speak about the carbon footprint reduction with DSM's engineering materials. EcoPax is the grade from DSM that supports in lower carbon footprint. So EcoPax, which is polyamide PA410, is a grade which is derived from a bio-based content. It has low moisture uptake and high chemical resistance, high stiffness and thermal properties. The bio-based content here starts from 70% and is possible up to 100%. A low carbon footprint, and it is recyclable like other thermoplastics. So this grade, EcoPax, is derived from castor seeds and has a fantastic carbon footprint, which is as low as 1.9. If you compare against the other bio-based grades, DSM possesses the lowest carbon footprint, which is 1.9, and compared to the fossil-based grades, which is 6.5. So this is the way we are supporting our customers to use a low carbon footprint material and therefore support the environment. I am on the last zone of my presentation, not taking much time here, but I would like to highlight the capabilities from DSM, the R&D strengths, manufacturing, application development, testing, and simulation strengths that DSM has. So DSM is a global company and has plants located all across the globe. 2 of them in India, catering to the customers, one in Pantnagar and one in Pune. So very close to the customers in India. Also equipped with R&D facilities and laboratory facilities within India. So DSM believes in providing technology to their customers, and therefore we work on application and support with simulation and technical expertise from DSM. As a global partner, we offer a broad material portfolio, a global presence and support. We have deep material design and application expertise and an intensive know-how. I'm on the last slide, so I hope with this presentation, I have been able to give a good overview about the materials and solutions for two-wheelers, including a little more about electromobility, ICE engines, and the sustainability and the carbon footprint approach from DSM. So thank you for your time and attention. And for more information, you can visit our website or also our exclusive application webpage, which is plasticfinder.com. So open for questions if there are any. And over to you, Mayank.
Thank you, Mr. Tolani. That was a very detailed presentation and really insightful. You took us through the entire, different aspects of material technology with respect to two-wheelers and especially EVs. So I would request our attendees to send in their questions in the Q&A box, and we will take them up with Mr. Tolani. First question that has come in, I'll just take that. And it's from Mr. K. Mohan, and he wants to understand that at the early stage of trial production level, when the offtake quantities are quite low, so is there possibility of using 3D printing technology for making these performance grade materials?
Very interesting question, Mayank, and I think 3D is the buzzword, but when we speak about the 3D printing, so generally the 3D printed parts in automotive are good to use for fit and finish purpose. Whenever it comes to performance, it is good to use the actual material. So that is how I would like to answer this.
Okay. I hope Mr. Mohan has received his answer. Till we get more questions, Mr. Tolani, I was seeing your presentation. Okay, so I'll take this question. It's from Gitesh Mutha. What is the tentative timeline needed to develop a small ECU housing in plastic from design concept to the first prototype sample?
So the design concept to the first prototype sample, I would say designing should not take much time, because as DSM, we are ready with materials. We have a lot of experience in this field. So from our side, it should not take much time on the support of materials. Whatever is the time I think should be taken is for the cutting of the tool and putting the parts and your validation timeline. But with the experience from the OEMs and tier ones that we see, it could be done within 8 to 12 weeks of time.
Okay, so around 3 months is what you're saying it will take to, Okay, so I hope Gitesh has got his answer. I want to understand from you, you mentioned about the use of these engineered plastic materials in, various in the body parts of a two-wheeler. So especially for gloss and, prevention from some of these, the environmental damages. So is the application of these materials really in the mass market segment as well, or is it only coming purely from the high-end segment?
No, this business is already in place. It is started from the mass market itself. So OEMs have picked this up because it is really saving lots to them on the secondary processing aspect. So it is becoming save on time and also supporting on the sustainability aspect, because painting is another aspect that the environment is considering.
Right. And overall, it also allows you to offer a better finish to the customer.
Yeah, and these materials are all UV stable materials. So they are all qualified for the weathering tests.
Right. And one more thing that I want to understand from you is this fire retardancy. So which becomes very critical, especially when we talk about electric two-wheelers. So
yeah,
you've mentioned about the certain parts which are really critical to use these FR materials. So does it also extend to the entire body shell which we see on a two-wheeler?
It is all about where you want to arrest the fire. So if you are going to arrest the fire as close to its source, I think that is the best way to do. And mainly the components that we see that would need this are the battery components, the battery enclosures and the battery components. Then you have the high voltage electronic components because the ECU housings and the charging direct contact parts. So if you see my presentation, I had given a classification in the charging system. There was one housing, which may not require the FR, but the direct contact parts will definitely require the FR. So it is always good to have at least an FR with V0 performance at the direct contact parts.
Right.
And also,
Sorry,
yeah, what we are proposing to our customers are to go for red phosphorus free FR grades, because then there is no question about the hazards that are coming from the red phosphorus.
Sure. One more thing that I want to understand from you, we have a host of, new players that are coming in the two-wheeler space right now, especially when we talk about electric two-wheelers. So what is the trend out there? Are these small companies really using all these FR materials, or, they're just buying out things from China and selling them in India?
Yeah, see, we are seeing that I think the smaller ones which are coming into the market, they mostly have an imported child parts sourced out. But the localization trend has started now in India. And as the localization trend is starting, see, to produce all this, they need volumes, because everybody is seeking volumes to invest. So if there is a possibility for the tiers, the system suppliers to commonize, I think everything can be done locally in India, and we can get safer vehicles on the road. So I think that is one way to look at it.
Right. And which is also quite the need of the hour, road safety and, safety of the motorists is quite essential. And I'm glad to also see, that the Indian market is slowly also seeing, people are getting more and more aware, and they're wanting for more and more safer products from OEMs. So, which is a good sign, I believe.
Yeah. And of course, EV is one of them, but we have also seen a lot of trends in the ICE segment, because even the ICE engines have become quite hotter over a period of time. Everybody is looking at higher CC engines, higher performance engines, and therefore the temperatures are increasing. So those are also the areas where maybe till the industry shifts completely towards the EV, I think some development will keep on happening there. Of course, not that high investment, but some kind of development keeps on happening there.
Right. And I believe some of those developments might also get, horizontally deployed in EVs as well.
Exactly.
Wonderful. So on that note, Mr. Tolani, I would like to thank you for coming out here and sharing your thoughts and your expertise with our audience and with us. Thank you so much for taking out time on the day 2 of this two-wheeler week.
Thank you, Mayank, and to the whole Autocar team on behalf of DSM. We are glad to have this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we come to the end of the day 2 of the Autocar Professional Two-Wheeler Week. But stay tuned, as we will be right back tomorrow with the theme, The Road to Greener Mobility. We will have esteemed guests joining us starting 10 o'clock tomorrow morning to talk about climate change and the mandate towards sustainable mobility. So see you tomorrow, and till then, goodbye and take care.